The text message from my mother-in-law Yolanda felt like a slap across the face. "We won't be attending Poppy's birthday party. I hope you understand that these celebrations are different for girls." I'm Summer, and at that moment, I wanted to throw my phone through our kitchen window. Instead, I gripped the counter until my knuckles turned white, trying to process how anyone could be so cruel to a 6-year-old child. "Mommy, is Abuela coming to my party?" Poppy's voice startled me. She stood in the doorway, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant, her dark curls still messy from her afternoon nap. "Honey, The words caught in my throat. How do you tell your daughter that her grandmother thinks she's less worthy of celebration because she wasn't born a boy? The front door opened, and Caleb walked in, loosening his tie. One look at my face, and he knew something was wrong. "What happened?" I thrust my phone at him. "Your mother happened. Again." His eyes scanned the message, and his face darkened. "I'll call her." "Don't bother," I said, watching Poppy retreat to the living room. "This isn't the first time, and it won't be the last. Remember Christmas, when they gave your brother's sons those expensive gaming consoles while Poppy got a coloring book? Summer, they're old-fashioned, but old-fashioned?" I laughed bitterly. "They attended your nephew's birthday last month. Threw him a party that looked like a mini carnival. But our daughter? She's not worth their time." Caleb ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd seen countless times when he was stuck between his wife and his family. "Let me talk to them. Maybe if I explain..." "Explain what?" I lowered my voice, conscious of Poppy in the next room. "That their granddaughter deserves love? That she notices every time they slight her? That she asked me last week why Abuela hugs her cousins more than her?" The pain in Caleb's eyes matched mine, but I needed more than pain. I needed action. "I'm done," I declared. "I'm done watching our daughter shrink herself to fit into their narrow view of what matters. This birthday party? It's going to be something they'll regret missing." My phone buzzed again. This time it was Prince, Caleb's brother. "Mom told me about the party. Try to see it from their perspective. Girls don't carry on the family name." "Perspective?" I shoved the phone in Caleb's face. "Your brother's perspective can go straight to hell." Caleb reached for me, but I stepped back. "I need you to choose, Caleb. Right now. Are you with your daughter or are you with them?" "That's not fair," he protested. "They're my family." "And what are we?" Before he could answer, Poppy appeared again, this time holding her birthday invitation. "Mommy, can I show you my drawing for the party?" I forced a smile. "Of course, baby." She climbed onto a kitchen stool, spreading out her artwork, a colorful circus tent with dancing animals. "See? There's going to be a lion and elephants and..." She pointed to each figure with pride. Looking at her excitement, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about showing my daughter that her worth wasn't determined by anyone else's prejudices. I picked up my phone and dialed Angela, my best friend. "Hey, remember that event planning company you worked with last summer? The one that did that celebrity kids party? I need their number." "Summer?" Angela's voice was concerned. "What are you planning?" "Something big. Something that will make the Salazars realize exactly what they're missing out on." I watched Poppy continue coloring, humming to herself. "They want to skip her party? Fine. But I'm going to make it the kind of party people talk about for years." "I'm in," Angela said without hesitation. "What do you need?" Caleb was watching me, his expression a mix of worry and curiosity. I met his gaze head on. "I need you to decide where you stand," I told him. "Because this party isn't just a birthday celebration anymore. It's a statement." He looked at Poppy, then back at me, and finally nodded. "I'm with you. Both of you. Always." "Good," I said, already making mental notes. "Because when I'm done, your family won't be boycotting our daughter's party. They'll be begging for an invitation. And in that moment, watching my daughter draw her dream party while my husband finally took a stand, I knew this wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about love, and about showing the world, especially the Salazars, that every child deserves to be celebrated regardless of their gender. This is insane, Summer, my mother Adeline said, but her eyes sparkled with excitement as she looked over the party plans spread across her dining room table. A full circus theme with professional performers? Too much? I asked, watching my father Frank write out another check. Not enough, he replied, sliding the check toward me. No one messes with my granddaughter. I stared at the amount. Dad, this is... Don't you dare say it's too much. He cut me off. I've been saving for something special, and this is it. Besides, your mother and I have some connections that might help. Angela burst through the front door, her arms full of sample fabrics and color swatches. You won't believe who just RSVP'd. Marcel Price's assistant called. You know, the media mogul? He's bringing his twins. My jaw dropped. Marcel Price owned half the children's entertainment networks in the country. How did he even hear about this? Remember my cousin who works at his company? Angela grinned. I might have mentioned that we're putting together the most magical children's party of the year. My phone buzzed. Caleb. The rental company confirmed the tent, he said. It's big enough for 200 people. 200? I squeaked. We invited 50. Trust me, Angela said, laying out photographs of aerial performers. With Marcel Price coming, you'll need the space. People are already calling, asking if they can attend. My mother grabbed her phone. I'm calling Catherine from the dance academy. Her students would be perfect for the opening number. Opening number? I felt slightly dizzy. Every great show needs an opening number, Dad said matter-of-factly. And this isn't just a party anymore, sweetheart. This is a statement. The front door opened again and Poppy ran in, fresh from her dance class. Mommy, Miss Rachel taught me a new trick for my routine. She twirled in place, her face glowing with excitement. I hadn't seen her this happy since before she started noticing her grandparents' rejection. Show us, princess, Dad encouraged, clearing space in the living room. Poppy launched into a series of graceful movements, ending with a perfect split. We all applauded, and I noticed tears in my mother's eyes. That's it, Mom declared. We're adding a stage. Poppy needs to perform. Mom, she's 6. And talented, Angela interrupted. Summer, don't you see? This is perfect. Let her shine. Show everyone exactly what the Salazars are missing. My phone buzzed again. Prince this time. Mom's upset. She says you're turning this into a circus just to spite her. I showed the message to everyone. Dad snorted. She hasn't seen anything yet. The nerve, Mom muttered, already dialing another number. Hello, James. It's Adeline. Remember that favor you owe me? How do you feel about bringing your elephants to a birthday party? Real elephants? Poppy's eyes went wide. Really, really real ones? I watched my daughter's face light up and suddenly all my doubts vanished. Yes, baby. Real elephants. And that's just the beginning. Angela was now on her laptop, creating a social media event. We need a hashtag. Something catchy. How about Mopoply's Big Top? Dad suggested. Perfect, Angela typed furiously. And posted. Now we wait. Within minutes, her phone started pinging with notifications. Oh my God, she whispered. It's going viral. Local influencers are sharing it already. Caleb walked in, looking both excited and nervous. My brother just called. He's trying to convince Mom to reconsider attending. Too late, I said firmly. That ship has sailed. Actually, Mom interjected, let them stew. Let them watch as this becomes the event of the season. Let them realize what their prejudice cost them. Mommy, Poppy tugged at my sleeve. Can I invite Maria from dance class? And Sophie? And Lucas? Invite your whole class, sweetheart, Dad said. This is your day. As Poppy squealed with delight and ran to make a list of friends, I felt a surge of gratitude for my family. My real family. The ones who showed up, who supported us, who understood that love doesn't discriminate. The rental company needs a deposit by tomorrow, Caleb reminded me. I picked up Dad's check. Tell them it's done. And Caleb? Thank you for standing with us. He pulled me close. I should have done it sooner. You and Poppy are my world. Group hug, Angela declared, pulling everyone together. As we stood there, surrounded by party plans and love, I realized this wasn't just about teaching the Salazars a lesson anymore. This was about creating something magical, something unforgettable, for a little girl who deserved every bit of joy we could give her. And if it happened to become the most talked about children's party in recent memory, well, that would just be the cherry on top. The day before the party, our backyard had transformed into a wonderland. A massive red and white striped tent dominated the space, while workers strung twinkling lights through every tree. The smell of fresh popcorn wafted through the air as the concession stands were tested. Mrs. Price's assistant is on the phone again, Angela announced, rushing toward me with her tablet. They want to know if they can bring a camera crew. Apparently, Marcel is doing a segment on unique children's parties for his new network. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a text from Yolanda. This excessive display is unnecessary. You're only hurting Poppy by spoiling her. Delete, Angela commanded, grabbing my phone. Focus on what matters. The camera crew? I need to ask Poppy, I said, heading inside where my daughter was practicing her routine with Mom. I stopped in the doorway, watching her twirl in her sparkly costume. She caught sight of me in the mirror and beamed. Mommy, Miss Rachel says I'm ready. Baby, how would you feel about being on TV tomorrow? Her eyes grew wide. Like a real star? Only if you want to, I assured her. It's your party. She launched herself into my arms. Yes. Can I show them my special dance? The one with the ribbon? Of course you can, Princess. I hugged her tight, then turned to Mom. What do you think? I think Yolanda's going to choke on her morning coffee when she sees her granddaughter on television. Mom replied with a wicked grin. A commotion outside drew our attention. Through the window, I saw James arriving with his elephants. Two gentle giants named Rose and Daisy. Poppy squealed and ran outside, where Dad was already waiting with his camera. Look who's here early to meet the birthday girl, James called out, helping Poppy offer a carrot to Rose. The elephant delicately took the treat as Poppy giggled. Photographers who'd been setting up their equipment started snapping pictures. Summer, Angela waved frantically from the tent. Marcel Price is here, a day early. My heart jumped as I saw a sleek black car pull up. A tall man in an impeccably tailored suit stepped out, followed by two children around Poppy's age. I hope you don't mind us dropping by today, Marcel said, extending his hand. My twins couldn't wait until tomorrow, and I wanted to see this set up for myself. Of course not, I managed, trying to sound calm. Poppy's just meeting the elephants if your children would like to join. Daddy, look. His daughter pointed at Poppy, who was now sitting on a decorated platform on Rose's back, James holding her securely. Can we try? Marcel watched thoughtfully as Poppy waved to everyone below, her face glowing with joy. Your daughter has quite a presence, he observed. Very natural in front of the cameras. She loves performing, I said proudly. She's prepared a special dance for tomorrow. Is that so? He turned to his assistant. Make sure we get that on camera, all of it. A familiar car drove slowly past the house, Prince's SUV. He didn't stop, but I knew he'd report back to Yolanda about the media presence and the elephants. Mrs. Price was wondering. Marcel's assistant approached. If Poppy might be interested in auditioning for our new children's program? It's about a little girl who runs away to join the circus. I nearly dropped my phone. I'd have to discuss it with my husband. Of course. Marcel nodded. No rush. Let's see how tomorrow goes first. As if on cue, Caleb's car pulled into the driveway. He stepped out, looking stunned at the transformation of our property. Is that Marcel Price? He whispered as he reached me. He wants Poppy to audition for a TV show, I whispered back. Caleb's eyes widened. What about my mother? What about her? I challenged. She made her choice. Summer. He took my hands. She's been calling all day, crying. Prince showed her the social media posts. She realizes she made a mistake. A mistake? I pulled away. She's been making mistakes since Poppy was born. Tomorrow isn't about her anymore. It's about our daughter. As if to emphasize my point, Poppy's laughter rang out across the yard. She was now teaching Marcel's twins her dance moves while the camera crew captured every moment. Look at her, I said to Caleb. Really look at her. She's happy, confident, shining. No one gets to dim that light. Not even your mother. He wrapped an arm around me, watching our daughter. You're right. And Summer? Thank you for fighting for her when I wasn't strong enough to. Better late than never. I smiled, leaning into him. Now, help me figure out where we're going to put the trapeze artists. They just called. They're bringing an extra performer. As the sun set behind our circus wonderland, I couldn't help but think that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising above and creating something magical in spite of those who tried to hold you down. The morning of the party exploded with energy. Camera crews positioned themselves around the tent while acrobats warmed up on their equipment. The smell of cotton candy and fresh popcorn filled the air as vendors prepared their carts. Mommy, Poppy called from her room. My hair isn't right. I rushed upstairs to find her struggling with her costume's headpiece. The sparkly purple outfit we'd chosen made her look like a tiny circus princess. Here, baby, I said, adjusting the rhinestone tiara. Perfect. Will I remember all my steps? Her bottom lip trembled slightly. You'll be amazing, I assured her. And if you forget anything, just smile and keep going. That's what real performers do. A knock at the door revealed Angela, slightly breathless. You need to see this. She held up her phone, showing a local news station's live feed. There, parked a block away, was a line of cars, the Salazar family, watching the preparations from a distance. Let them watch, I said, turning back to Poppy. Ready to greet your guests, sweetheart? She nodded enthusiastically, previous nerves forgotten. We descended the stairs to find Marcel Price in our living room, discussing something with Caleb. There's our star. Marcel beamed at Poppy. My twins haven't stopped talking about you since yesterday. They're already outside with the elephants. The doorbell started ringing constantly as guests arrived. Children rushed past in excitement, parents gaped at the transformed backyard, and photographers captured every moment. Summer? Caleb pulled me aside. My mother just called. She's crying. Not now, I said firmly, watching Poppy greet her friends. This is Poppy's moment. The party kicked into high gear as professional performers began their acts. Trapeze artists soared overhead while jugglers weaved through the crowd. James gave elephant rides to delighted children, and face painters transformed little faces into exotic animals. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Please welcome our special birthday performer, Miss Poppy. The crowd gathered around the central stage as the music began. Poppy emerged from behind a sparkly curtain, her ribbon dancing through the air as she started her routine. Every move was perfect, every turn precise. The audience watched, transfixed, as this 6-year-old commanded the stage with natural grace. Remarkable, Marcel murmured beside me. She has that special something, that spark that can't be taught. As Poppy finished her performance with a perfect split, the crowd erupted in applause. Camera flashes went off like fireworks, and Marcel's crew captured everything. Summer, he turned to me. I'd like to offer Poppy a screen test next week. That routine just convinced me. She's exactly what we're looking for. Before I could respond, Angela rushed over. You need to see this. She led me to the entrance where Yolanda stood, tears streaming down her face. Behind her, Prince and several other family members waited awkwardly. Please, Yolanda whispered. Please let me see my granddaughter. Now you want to see her? I felt the anger rising. After you dismissed her? After you made her feel less than? I was wrong, she sobbed. Watching her perform just now, from down the street, I've been so foolish, so stuck in old ways. Please, Summer, let me make it right. That's not my decision, I said coldly. It's Poppy's. As if summoned, Poppy appeared beside me, still flushed from her performance. She stopped short when she saw Yolanda. Abuela? She said quietly. Mi amor. Yolanda fell to her knees. I'm so sorry. Your party, you... Everything is beautiful. Will you forgive your foolish grandmother? Poppy looked up at me, then back at Yolanda. With the wisdom that sometimes only children possess, she stepped forward and hugged her grandmother. You missed all my other parties, she said simply. Don't miss any more, okay? Yolanda broke down completely, holding Poppy close. Never again, mi amor. Never again. Marcel appeared at my elbow. Now that's good television, he said softly. Real emotion, real reconciliation. Summer, if you're willing, I'd like to develop a show around Poppy, not just as a performer, but as this remarkable little girl who brings people together. I watched as Poppy led Yolanda by the hand to meet Marcel's twins, her natural warmth already melting years of prejudice. She does have a gift, I admitted, but any decisions about shows will need to wait until tomorrow. Today is just about celebrating. Of course, Marcel smiled, but do expect my call. As the party continued around us, with acrobats spinning overhead and music filling the air, I watched my daughter bridge the gap between old prejudices and new beginnings. She danced with her cousins, showed her grandmother her ribbon techniques, and glowed with the kind of happiness that only comes from being truly seen and valued. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's showing people exactly what they almost missed out on. 3 days after the party, our living room had become command central for what Angela jokingly called Operation Poppy Stardom. My coffee table disappeared under stacks of business cards, offers, and magazines featuring photos from the party. Look at this one, Angela said, holding up her phone. The video of Poppy's performance had gone viral, reaching millions of views. The comments are incredible. This little girl is going places. Most magical children's party ever. Where was my invitation? My phone buzzed. Yolanda again. Since the party, she'd called daily, trying to make amends. You should answer, Mom said, sorting through another pile of correspondence. She brought flowers to the house yesterday while you were out. I'm not ready, I admitted. It's too soon. The doorbell rang. Caleb opened it to find Marcel's assistant holding a thick envelope. The contract for Poppy's screen test, she explained. Mr. Price wants to fast-track this. He's never seen such organic audience response. As we reviewed the paperwork, Poppy burst through the door with Dad, returning from dance class. Miss Rachel says I'm ready for point shoes, she announced, twirling through the room. Slow down, princess. Dad laughed. You've got plenty of time for that. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Prince. Mom's a mess. She can't sleep. Please talk to her. Your brother-in-law? Angela asked. I nodded. You know, Mom said carefully. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward. Before I could respond, Poppy climbed onto my lap. Mommy, can Abuela come to my dance class tomorrow? She called Miss Rachel and asked if she could watch. I stiffened. She did what? She's trying, Summer, Caleb said softly. She even called the studio to learn about proper dance attire for young girls. She wants to understand Poppy's world. The doorbell rang again. This time, it was Yolanda herself, clutching a pink gift bag. I know I should have called first, she said quickly before I could speak. But I found these while cleaning my attic. They belong to my grandmother. She pulled out a pair of antique silver hair combs, decorated with tiny dancers. She was a ballerina in Mexico City. I never told anyone because I was taught that performing wasn't respectable. I was wrong. So wrong. Poppy's eyes lit up at the combs. They're so pretty. They're for you, mi amor, Yolanda said. If your mother allows it. I looked at the combs, then at my daughter's hopeful face, and finally at Yolanda's tear-filled eyes. They're beautiful, I conceded. Thank you. There's more, Yolanda continued, pulling out old photographs. These are of my grandmother performing. I thought maybe they could inspire Poppy. The photos showed a striking young woman in classical ballet poses. Poppy grabbed them eagerly. Look, Mommy, she's doing my moves. Actually, Yolanda said hesitantly, I was hoping. Would it be possible for me to attend the screen test next week? I want to support Poppy properly this time. The room fell silent. Everyone watched me, waiting for my response. You heard her, I said finally. You heard us both. I know, Yolanda whispered. I will spend the rest of my life making up for that. Mommy, Poppy tugged at my sleeve. Remember what Miss Rachel says about second chances? I had to smile. That they're like learning a new dance move. You have to give them your full attention. Poppy nodded seriously. And you have to practice to get better. Angela snorted into her coffee. Out of the mouths of babes. Okay, I said, looking directly at Yolanda. You can come to the screen test. But this is Poppy's journey. No criticism, no old-fashioned ideas about what girls should or shouldn't do. I promise, Yolanda said fervently. I want to learn, to understand, to be the grandmother she deserves. As if to seal the deal, Poppy took the antique combs and held them out to Yolanda. Can you put these in my hair, Abuela? Like your grandmother wore them? The tender way Yolanda arranged the combs in Poppy's hair, explaining their history and sharing stories about her grandmother, the ballerina, made something shift in my heart. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, not yet, but it was a beginning. Look, Angela whispered, showing me her phone. She'd captured the moment between grandmother and granddaughter, the silver combs glinting in Poppy's dark curls. Sometimes the best revenge is letting people realize what they almost lost. I watched as Yolanda taught Poppy how to pose like her great-great-grandmother, their laughter filling the room, and realized that maybe, just maybe, this was better than any revenge I could have planned. The screen test studio buzzed with activity. Makeup artists fussed over Poppy while Marcel's team adjusted lights and cameras. In the waiting area, our entire family had assembled. Even Prince brought his sons, who now watched their cousin with undisguised admiration. She's so calm, Yolanda whispered, clutching her rosary. I'm more nervous than she is. That's our Poppy, Dad said proudly. Born for the spotlight. Marcel strode in, reviewing notes on his tablet. All right, everyone. We're going to film 3 scenes. First, Poppy will perform her ribbon dance. Then we'll do a short dialogue scene, and finally, an improvised interaction with our current show's star, Tommy Turner. Tommy Turner? Poppy's cousins exclaimed. From the Magic Treehouse? On cue, a freckled boy about Poppy's age entered with his mother. He waved at Poppy, who gave a little wave back. Places, everyone, Marcel called. Family members can watch from the observation room. As we filed into the adjacent room with its large viewing window, Yolanda grabbed my arm. Summer, wait. There's something you should know. What is it? I've been taking dance classes, she admitted. Beginner's ballet. I want to understand Poppy's world better. Before I could respond, the music started. Poppy began her routine, but this time with something extra. She'd incorporated the story of her great-great-grandmother, the ballerina, into her movements. The antique combs sparkled in her hair as she danced. Extraordinary, Marcel murmured, scribbling notes. She's not just performing, she's telling a story. The ribbon dance flowed seamlessly into the dialogue scene, where Poppy read lines with a natural ease that made even the crew stop and watch. Now for the improv, Marcel announced. Tommy, join Poppy, please. Just play together naturally. Pretend you're meeting at a playground. What happened next left everyone speechless. Poppy and Tommy created an impromptu story about a magical circus where children could fly. Their interaction was so genuine, so engaging that Marcel didn't call cut for nearly 10 minutes. That's it, he exclaimed finally. That's exactly what we've been looking for. Summer, Caleb, can we talk contracts? As Marcel led us to his office, Angela rushed in with her phone. You need to see this. Someone leaked footage from the birthday party online. It's trending nationwide. The video showed Poppy's reconciliation with Yolanda, followed by her performance. The comments were overwhelming. This is the kind of representation we need. Finally, a young girl who shows that tradition and progress can coexist. When's her show starting? My daughters need this. Marcel's assistant burst in. Sir, Good Morning America wants to feature Poppy and her grandmother. They're calling it Breaking Barriers Through Dance, a story about bridging generational and cultural gaps. Perfect timing, Marcel smiled. Because I'm not just offering Poppy a role in our existing show. I want to create a new series, centered around her. A young girl who uses dance to bring her family's past and present together. Caleb squeezed my hand as Marcel continued. We'll call it Poppy's Grand Jeté. It's about family, tradition, and moving forward. Your daughter's story at the party? That's exactly what families across America need to see. What do you think? I asked Caleb. I think, he said slowly, that our daughter has a gift for healing hearts, even ones as stubborn as my family's. We returned to the studio to find Poppy teaching her cousins basic dance moves while Yolanda watched, beaming with pride. Before you decide, Yolanda approached us. I want you to know something. I've rented a studio space next to Poppy's dance school. I'm opening a Hispanic cultural center. Dance classes, storytelling, art. I want to preserve our traditions while celebrating our children's futures. Abuela, Poppy ran over. Did you see? Tommy and I made up a whole story. Can he come to your cultural center too? Of course, mi amor. Everyone is welcome. Marcel cleared his throat. So, shall we sign? The network wants to fast-track this project. I looked at my daughter, surrounded by family who had learned to love her for exactly who she was. At Yolanda, who had transformed her regret into action. At Caleb, who stood firmly by our side. Poppy, I called. How would you like to star in your own TV show? Her eyes widened. Can I dance in it? It's all about dance, tradition, and family. Marcel explained. Can Abuela tell stories about the bailarina? That's exactly what we want. Poppy looked at each of us, then did a perfect pirouette. Yes, please. As everyone celebrated around us, I caught Yolanda wiping away tears. Thank you, she whispered, for giving me a second chance to be part of something magical. Sometimes I realized the best endings aren't about getting even. They're about growing together. The theater buzzed with excitement for Poppy's first live performance as the star of Poppy's Grand Jeté. 3 months of filming had culminated in this moment, a special preview event combining scenes from the show with a live dance performance. 5 minutes, Angela called, adjusting Poppy's costume. The antique combs, now her signature accessory, gleamed under the stage lights. Yolanda rushed in, carrying a small box. Mi amor, look what I found in the Cultural Center's first donation drive. She opened it to reveal a delicate golden bracelet with tiny ballet shoes. It belonged to another dancer who wanted you to have it. It's beautiful, Abuela, Poppy gasped. Can I wear it tonight? As Yolanda fastened the bracelet, Marcel appeared. Full house, he announced. Every network executive, entertainment reporter, and social media influencer in the city is out there. Are you ready, Poppy? She nodded confidently, then turned to me. Mommy, will you and Daddy watch from backstage? Front row, baby, Caleb assured her, right between Abuela and Grandma Adeline. The orchestra began tuning up. Prince poked his head in, his sons trailing behind him. Break a leg, Poppy. The boys made you something. They presented her with a hand-drawn card covered in glitter. You're our favorite star, the youngest said shyly. Places, everyone, the stage manager called. I hugged Poppy tight. Remember what we always say? Shine bright and dance with my heart, she recited, then skipped to her position. The house lights dimmed. Marcel stepped onto the stage to introduce the show, explaining how a birthday party had sparked a movement celebrating family, tradition, and the arts. The screen above the stage lit up with the show's first episode. The audience laughed at Poppy's natural wit, gasped at her dance sequences, and fell silent during the emotional scenes where her character helped bridge generational divides. When the screening ended, the curtain rose to reveal Poppy center stage. The music began, a fusion of classical ballet and traditional Hispanic melodies that Yolanda had helped compose. Poppy's performance told the story of her great-great-grandmother, the ballerina, through dance. As she moved, images from the antique photographs were projected behind her, creating a dialogue between past and present. Halfway through, Yolanda rose from her seat and walked to the stage. This was the surprise we'd planned. Grandmother and granddaughter dancing together, mixing ballet with traditional Mexican dance steps Yolanda had learned. The audience erupted in applause as they finished. Poppy in her modern costume, Yolanda in traditional dress, embracing center stage. That's not all. Marcel's voice boomed through the speakers. Tonight, we're announcing the Poppy's Grand Jeté Foundation, providing dance and arts education to underserved communities. Caleb stood up. And the first cultural center opens next month, he announced, with programs celebrating all traditions, all families, all dreams. The applause was deafening. Reporters' cameras flashed as Poppy and Yolanda took their bows. But the real surprise came when Prince and his sons joined them on stage, followed by our entire extended family. This is what we're about, Caleb declared into the microphone. Not just entertainment, but transformation. Not just tradition, but growth. At the after-party, surrounded by industry executives and reporters, Poppy sat with her cousins, teaching them dance moves while still in her performance costume. Summer, Yolanda touched my arm. Look at this. She showed me her phone, a message from her sister in Mexico. I saw the live stream. I was wrong about girls carrying on traditions. Poppy has carried our family's story further than we ever imagined. Marcel clinked his glass for attention. The network has seen the response. We're not just picking up the show for a full season. We're launching a whole programming block about family traditions and modern dreams. And it all started with a little girl's birthday party. And a grandmother who learned to change? Yolanda added softly. Tommy Turner, who'd become Poppy's regular co-star, ran up with exciting news. Poppy, we're trending #1. All the kids at my school want to learn dance now. As camera crews captured the celebration, I watched my daughter move effortlessly between worlds, teaching her cousins ballet while learning traditional dances from Yolanda, sharing stories with reporters while keeping her young co-stars entertained. You know, Angela said, scrolling through social media reactions, this is way better than revenge. You didn't just prove them wrong, you helped them change. Poppy's laughter rang out as she danced with her grandfather, her new bracelet catching the light, the antique combs secure in her hair, a perfect blend of past and future. Ready for what comes next? Caleb asked, putting his arm around me. Looking at our transformed family, I smiled. As long as we dance through it together. The grand opening of the cultural center buzzed with energy as children rushed through the newly painted halls. Poppy led a group tour, proudly showing off the dance studios, art rooms, and the special heritage hall filled with photographs and stories from different families. And this, she announced, stopping at a prominent display, is my great-great-grandmother, the ballerina. The antique photos had been beautifully framed alongside the silver combs that started it all. Poppy! Tommy called from the main studio. The camera crew is ready for our demonstration. As the children gathered to watch, I felt Yolanda's hand slip into mine. I never imagined this, she whispered. Look at what she created. The center had become more than we'd dreamed, a place where tradition and progress danced together. In one room, Prince's sons took modern dance classes. In another, elderly community members taught traditional crafts to eager students. Summer. Angela rushed over with her tablet. The registration list for next semester is completely full. We have a waiting list of over 200 kids. Marcel emerged from his meeting with the network executives. It's official. We're franchising the cultural center concept nationwide. Poppy's Grand Jeté isn't just a show anymore. It's a movement. Mommy, Poppy called from the studio. Come quick. Abuela's going to show everyone her recital dance. I followed her voice to find Yolanda in her ballet practice clothes, ready to perform the routine she'd been practicing for months. The room fell silent as she began, her movements telling the story of her journey from rigid traditionalist to proud grandmother of a dancing star. Remember when she wouldn't even come to my birthday? Poppy whispered, watching her grandmother dance. Now she's braver than anyone. Caleb wrapped his arm around us both. Sometimes people just need the right motivation to change. The demonstration class began, with Poppy and Tommy leading children through basic steps. Parents watched from the observation window, including several who had once sided with Yolanda's old views. Mi amor, Yolanda called to Poppy after the class. Show them the special combination we created. Together, grandmother and granddaughter performed a dance that blended ballet with traditional Mexican steps. The sight of them moving in perfect harmony brought tears to more than a few eyes. This is what healing looks like, Mom said, squeezing my hand. Not just forgetting the past, but building something new from it. Dad, who'd been quietly documenting everything on his camera, showed me his latest shot. Poppy teaching Yolanda a pirouette while both wore identical grins. The network loves this angle, Marcel commented. The show's next season will focus on the cultural center and its impact on the community. Real stories, real transformations. Prince approached with his wife, both looking somewhat sheepish. We've been thinking, would you consider adding traditional music classes? The boys are interested in learning. Of course, Poppy exclaimed before anyone could respond. Everyone's welcome here. That's the whole point. As the day wound down, families lingered in the Heritage Hall, adding their own stories to the collection. Yolanda stood before her grandmother's photos, now joined by pictures from Poppy's show and the birthday party that started it all. I was so wrong, she said softly. I thought holding on to tradition meant resisting change. But look at this place. We're not losing our heritage, we're helping it grow. Poppy, still wearing her practice tutu, took her grandmother's hand. Abuela, can we add your ballet recital photo to the wall? You want to display that? Of course, it's part of our story now. As Yolanda and Poppy arranged the new photo, I caught sight of my reflection in the studio mirrors. The woman who had once plotted revenge had transformed too, just like everyone else. Ready to head home? Caleb asked, gathering Poppy's dance bags. Wait, Poppy called. One more thing. She ran to the center of the main studio and performed the split that had once dazzled her birthday party audience. But this time, Yolanda joined her on the floor, matching her pose perfectly. Look, Mommy, Abuela learned it. The room erupted in applause and laughter. Even Prince's boys attempted their own wobbly splits. You know what's better than revenge? I said to Angela as we watched the impromptu split competition unfold. What's that? Revolution, because that's what we'd created. Not just a TV show or a cultural center, but a revolution of hearts. A place where the past and future could coexist, where tradition could evolve without being lost, and where a little girl's birthday party could change everything. Again, Poppy called out to her growing dance family. Everyone together this time. And as the room filled with joyful attempts at splits and pirouettes, I realized that sometimes the best endings aren't endings at all. They're beautiful new beginnings.
My name is Olivia Brown. I am 28 years old. And I have a younger sister named Mia, who is 22 years old. This is the story of our family's collapse. But at the same time, it is also a story of its rebirth. Now, I am sitting at my desk at work, staring blankly at the computer screen in front of me. The screen displays a record of bank transactions. No matter how many times I look at the large withdrawal amount listed there, I cannot accept it as reality. My hands are trembling, and anger and sadness swirl within my chest. On the desk sits a family photo. It showed my smiling parents, Mia and myself. That family photo now feels painfully ironic. I never imagined things would turn out this way. On the surface, our family was an ordinary middle-class household. My father, James, worked as a site supervisor at a local construction company. With his meticulous personality and solid skills, he earned the trust of his subordinates and was highly regarded at work. My mother, Charlotte, was employed as an administrative staff member at an elementary school. She was active in the PTA and well regarded in the community. We lived in an affordable house in the suburbs with our golden retriever, Cooper. On weekends, we went on family picnics, and during vacations, we traveled to nearby tourist destinations. It was the kind of family life you'd find anywhere. My father looked forward to setting up the barbecue grill in the yard on weekends and inviting the neighbors over for parties. My mother baked homemade apple pies, and when their aroma filled the house, it always made us feel happy. However, beneath that ordinary exterior, subtle dynamics were always at play. Looking back, it might have started when I entered elementary school. From a young age, I played the role of the responsible eldest daughter in our family. It was a role that naturally arose from my own personality. In elementary school, I often served as the class leader, earning the trust of my teachers. I always finished my homework by the deadline and consistently maintained top grades on tests. In middle school, I became the student council president and captained the swimming club, achieving victories in district tournaments. At 15, I started a part-time job at a fast food restaurant on weekends, earning my own pocket money. The first thing I bought with my paycheck was a beautiful scarf for my mother's birthday present. However, her reaction was unexpected. "Thank you, but you didn't have to push yourself to buy it," she said. And I remember feeling a sense of distance in her words. Meanwhile, Mia grew up as the idol of the family. She was friendly, cheerful, and could quickly get along with anyone. Her school grades were average, but her sunny personality earned her many friends, and our house was always lively with her friends visiting. Our parents showered her with what could be called overprotective love, granting nearly all her wishes. One particularly memorable difference was how our birthdays were celebrated. For Mia's birthday, there was always a big party, with many classmates invited. The yard was decorated with balloons, and a homemade cake was accompanied by a mountain of presents. In contrast, my birthdays were often celebrated modestly with the words, "You're an adult now." When I turned 12, I asked for a bright red bicycle. At the time, many of my classmates were commuting to school by bicycle, and I longed to join them. However, my parents dismissed it as extravagant. Instead, they gave me study guides as a gift. 3 years later, when Mia wanted a similar red bicycle, my parents immediately decided to buy it for her. Because she's still young, she needs a safe way to get around, they explained. The incident when I was 16 remains vividly etched in my memory. After saving diligently for more than 6 months, I finally had enough money to buy a new gaming console. I took on extra shifts on weekends, made my own lunches to save money, and worked tirelessly to save up. When I told my parents, they casually responded, "Oh, we bought that for Mia last week, so you can share it with her." They said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. 10-year-old Mia, oblivious to my feelings, was overjoyed. She monopolized the brand new console, and whenever I wanted to use it, she'd say, "I'm using it right now, so wait your turn." In the end, my savings were redirected into a fund for my education. Yet, strangely enough, I didn't resent my parents at the time. If anything, I believed that those experiences made me stronger. I discovered the joy of achieving things through my own efforts and learned the importance of financial independence. I excelled in high school and majored in finance in college. While my parents used some of my savings to help with tuition, they didn't cover everything. So I secured scholarships to pay for my education and moved out to live in a university dorm. Balancing part-time jobs with my studies, I steadily prepared for my future. During college, I worked part-time at the library and also tutored students on weekends. From early mornings to late nights, I juggled studying and working in a relentless cycle. Still, my passion for mastering financial expertise never waned. In my investment analysis classes, I consistently achieved top grades, earning praise from professors who would say, "You have a bright future ahead," while I led a busy and demanding life in college. Mia, now a middle school student, was thriving at home with full support from our parents. Whenever I returned home on weekends, the living room would almost always be filled with Mia's friends. The aroma of Mom's homemade cookies and brownies would fill the house, accompanied by the cheerful laughter of middle school girls echoing throughout. One particularly memorable event was when Mia joined the school drama club. She was cast as the lead in Snow White, which was to be performed at the school festival. Our parents immediately decided to enroll her in a professional acting class and spared no expense on her costume. Dad took time off work to help build the stage props, while Mom diligently drove Mia to and from rehearsals every day and practiced lines with her on weekends. If Mia wanted to go to the shopping mall with her friends, Mom happily drove her there, generously giving her money for her to spend as well. Her room steadily filled with new clothes and accessories, turning it into something akin to a boutique. When it came to academics, even if Mia scored poorly on tests, our parents were lenient, saying, "This isn't a big deal." When Mia proposed a fundraising project for the student council or participated in local cleanup activities instead, our parents beamed with pride, saying, "We're so glad she's growing up to value her connections with others." Once, when Mia failed her midterm math exam, scoring below the passing mark, our parents promptly hired a private tutor. When I offered to teach her myself, they gently declined, saying, "You're busy with your own studies, aren't you?" Eventually, one of Dad's colleagues' children came to our house twice a week to tutor Mia. For her 13th birthday, our parents threw a grand party. The yard was decorated with pink and white balloons, and a custom-made cake by a professional pastry chef was the centerpiece. Her entire class was invited, along with a few friends she had met at her cram school. The gift table was piled high with extravagant items, including the latest smartphone and a coveted designer handbag, luxuries even to my eyes. I watched this spectacle during a break from working on my university assignments, feeling a tangle of emotions. I adored my sister, but I couldn't help but be bewildered by the stark disparity in how we were treated. Mia basked in our parents' affection, glowing like a princess. Her smile was pure, and she seemed to take their devotion for granted. While I worked part-time at the library on weekends, Mia spent her time watching movies with friends or enjoying shopping trips. Whenever I saw Mia's social media posts, I couldn't help but think back to my own middle school days. It amazed me how two sisters born to the same parents could grow up in such vastly different environments. After graduating from college, I got a job as an analyst at a major investment bank. At 22, I became fully financially independent and started living alone in a small apartment. It wasn't uncommon for me to arrive at work by 7 a.m. and not leave until after 10 p.m., but the income made it worthwhile. My job mainly involved conducting financial analyses of emerging companies and preparing detailed reports for investment decisions. I received high evaluations from my supervisors and was entrusted with important projects by my third year at the company. Even on weekends, I voluntarily attended training sessions and continued studying to earn professional financial certifications. Meanwhile, Mia enrolled at a local state university. Her major was communications. Mia's college life seemed like something straight out of a coming-of-age drama. She immersed herself in club activities, partied with friends, and spent her summer vacations traveling abroad with financial support from our parents. While building my own life, I made an effort to maintain a connection with my family. I visited home once a month, had meals with my family, and listened to Mia's stories about her college life. Dad remained as passionate about gardening as ever, and Mom kept busy with community volunteer work. On the surface, our relationship seemed peaceful, but a subtle sense of unease lingered. This dynamic continued for several years. Around that time, I began noticing a shift in my parents' attitude toward my work. Up until then, they had shown little interest in my job, but suddenly they started making unsolicited remarks. When they asked about my work, I honestly shared stories about my promotions and awards. However, their response was always, "You're working so much, but what about marriage?" At the same time, Mia was struggling with her job search. Mom always responded to Mia's complaints with words of encouragement like, "You're such a hard worker," or "I'm sure you'll find the perfect job." Looking back, I wonder if seeing Mia struggle with her job search made my parents want to bring me down a notch. This spring, Mia finally graduated from college and secured a position at an event planning company. I was genuinely proud of her and decided to celebrate her graduation by gifting her the latest laptop she had been wanting. It cost the equivalent of 3 months of my salary, but I wanted to mark the beginning of her new life with something special. Mia was thrilled with the gift, but my parents' reaction was unexpected. "You didn't have to buy something so expensive. Are you trying to show off to your sister?" Their words left me deeply disappointed. What was meant as a gesture of celebration had been misinterpreted negatively. One day, I received an excited phone call from Mom. I was walking through the office district on a pleasant spring afternoon, listening to her voice over the phone. "Olivia, I have wonderful news." Her voice was full of excitement. "What happened?" "Mia is engaged." I was stunned. I knew Mia was seeing someone, but I hadn't heard anything about marriage. The man, as I'd heard, worked for a local real estate company and had met Mia through their church. "And," Mom continued eagerly, "we've planned the perfect gift for her." "Wow, that sounds wonderful," I replied casually. It wasn't unusual for my parents to do something special for Mia. "Yes, we withdrew $20,000 from your account using your debit card. It's for Mia's wedding expenses." The moment I heard those words, it felt as if my entire world came to a halt. The warmth of the spring day and the bustling noise of the street faded into the distance. What did you just say?" I couldn't believe my ears. Standing amidst the bustling office district, I felt my knees begin to tremble. "The money's already been spent," Mom said brightly, as though sharing some good news. "We found the perfect wedding dress, and we've already paid the deposit for the wedding venue. The coordinator said this date will be booked up in no time, so we decided on the spot." I was at a loss for words. Mom began casually detailing how she had drained my savings, as though discussing the weather. The dress was $6,000, the venue deposit $5,000, and another $3,000 for the reception decorations deposit. She cheerfully continued her calculations. "I found your PIN in the notebook in your desk drawer," it said, "for emergencies. And Mia's wedding is an emergency, isn't it?" I had indeed written down my PIN for emergencies, but I had tucked it away in a drawer, deeply hidden. It was meant for situations like accidents or medical emergencies, not for this. I never imagined my parents would find it and use it without my consent. "Mom, this is illegal," I said, my voice shaking. "Using my money without even consulting me, it's a crime." I stopped in my tracks amidst the crowd bustling along the street. My head was spinning, and I could feel my breaths growing shallow. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," Mom said with a light laugh. That laugh wounded me even more deeply. "We're family, aren't we? A wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Besides, everything's already booked. Canceling now would cost even more, wouldn't it?" I was speechless. Every word she uttered felt like a knife piercing my heart. Summoning what strength I had left, I replied, "This is a crime. I will make sure every penny is returned." Before she could say anything further, I ended the call. This wasn't just about money. It was about years of unfair treatment and the betrayal of trust. It felt as if my very existence was being denied. After hanging up, I went to the office restroom and cried for what felt like hours. The reflection staring back at me in the mirror was a mess, tears streaking down my face. That $20,000 had taken me 3 years to save. I had worked tirelessly from early mornings to late nights, taken on extra shifts on weekends, and minimized my own expenses just to build up that fund. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, replaying my conversation with Mom over and over in my head. My chest felt as though it were being crushed. As I lay there, my eyes fell on the family photo hanging on the wall of my apartment. Memories of Christmas gatherings, vacation trips, and countless birthday parties flooded back like a slideshow. What once seemed like happy moments now carried a bitter, ironic tone. The next morning, before I left for work, I received a call from Dad. The ringing of my phone in the early morning, just as the sun began to rise, set my heart racing. I hadn't even had my coffee yet. "Olivia, I heard from your mother." Dad's voice was harsher than usual. In the background, I could hear the familiar hum of the lawn mower. Even when angry, Dad never skipped his daily yard work. "Why are you making such a big fuss?" His words made it sound as though I was the one being unreasonable. "Are you seriously saying the same thing as Mom?" I asked, disbelief evident in my voice. Outside my window, I watched the rush of people heading to work. "This is a crime. Using my money without my consent is illegal. You're overreacting." Dad interrupted. His tone was the same as when he used to scold me as a child. "We're family. You should be more supportive of your sister." Support? I already gave Mia a laptop as a gift for starting her new job. But that was my choice. It's completely different from taking my money without permission. My voice was trembling. Speaking on a crowded commuter train, I tried my best to suppress my tone so others wouldn't overhear. "When did you become so cold?" Dad's voice was heavy with disappointment. Those words pierced my heart like a venomous sting. "You weren't like this before. The Olivia I knew wouldn't have acted this way." Something inside me broke at those words. Years of suppressed emotions surged out like a dam finally bursting. The old me? "Dad, I've always worked hard on my own. Neither you nor Mom ever did anything for me. But you've given Mia everything." I struggled to keep my voice from breaking. "Are you really bringing up those old stories again?" Dad's irritation was palpable. The sound of the lawn mower suddenly stopped. "You need to stop comparing yourself to your sister." After he hung up, I couldn't stop the tears from flowing. Before reaching the office, I rushed to the restroom to fix my ruined makeup. The face staring back at me in the mirror looked utterly exhausted. It hit me hard. My parents truly didn't understand how I felt. That afternoon, I contacted the bank. After reviewing the transaction history, it was clear my parents had used my PIN to withdraw the money. The banker spoke sympathetically but explained that since the correct PIN had been entered, it technically didn't qualify as unauthorized access. Still, I refused to give up. That weekend, after much deliberation, I decided to report the incident to the police. On my way to the station, I passed a park where I had once walked with my parents as a child. A photo from that day still hangs in the living room of their house. The contrast between those memories and the present reality was almost unbearable. This decision to report them wasn't made on impulse. The night before, I had stayed up late, sitting on my apartment balcony, lost in thought. With the city's noise fading into the distance and a vast starry sky above, I confronted my life and my choices. This wasn't just about money. It was about my dignity as a person. As I approached the police station, a final wave of hesitation washed over me. I stopped at the steps leading to the entrance, my eyes catching sight of a cross atop the church across the street. The cross resembled the one at the church I used to attend with my parents as a child. For a moment, I hesitated, but I took a deep breath and stepped forward. As I opened the heavy door, I was met with a calm reception area, where a uniformed officer looked at me with a gentle expression. "What can I do for you?" Hearing that, I felt a small sense of relief. "I'd like to report unauthorized money withdrawals by my family," I said. My voice trembled, but deep inside, I felt a growing sense of resolve. Inside the station, I explained the situation in detail to a young female officer. My hands shook with nervousness, but she listened intently, maintaining a serious expression. While taking notes, she occasionally nodded and gave me a kind, understanding look. "Family-related financial disputes like this aren't uncommon," she explained. "But that's precisely why it's important to handle them firmly. Being family doesn't justify illegal actions." The police took the matter seriously and decided to question my parents about the incident. As they prepared the report, I sat on one of the station's hard chairs, contemplating what lay ahead. What would my parents say? How would Mia react? What about their reputation in the community? A flood of worries washed over me one after another. Later that evening, I received a call informing me that a police vehicle had arrived at my parents' house. Outside my window, the sun was setting, and the streetlights were beginning to flicker on one by one. In the living room of their home, my parents were surely shocked by the officer's visit. The mere thought of it made my chest tighten, but I reminded myself there was no turning back. After the police got involved, events began to unfold rapidly. My parents were interrogated under suspicion of fraud, and the matter was eventually resolved through civil court. The court ruled that my parents must repay the full $20,000 they had unlawfully withdrawn. They fiercely resisted. "We don't have that kind of money. Repayment is impossible." They argued as though I were an ungrateful daughter, undeserving of sympathy. Dad, who was only a few years away from retirement, adamantly refused to take on new debt. Mom, through tears, accused me, saying, "How could you betray your family like this?" What surprised me, however, was Mia's reaction. Amid the busy preparations for her wedding, she came to visit me at my office. "Olivia, I'm so sorry," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "This is all because of me." Mia admitted that what our parents had done was wrong and apologized for her unwitting involvement. Her fiancé also expressed understanding and offered to help repay the money little by little as a couple. I was deeply moved by Mia's sincerity. While I still harbored anger over the years of unfair treatment, that anger was directed at our parents, not at Mia herself. "Mia, this isn't your fault. This is about our parents," I told her. We embraced, sharing our feelings and bridging the emotional gap that had grown between us over the years. However, my relationship with my parents deteriorated beyond repair. Though they promised to make monthly installment payments, they failed to honor that commitment. Instead, they spread stories among relatives and acquaintances, painting me as a heartless daughter and casting themselves as victims. In the end, I made the decision to cut ties with my parents. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was a necessary one to protect my own life and well-being. The day I went back to retrieve my belongings from the house, Mom stood silently by the second-floor window, watching me. Dad immersed himself in his yard work, completely ignoring my presence. The house, once filled with warm memories, now felt cold and distant. It has been 6 months since then. On weekends, I regularly meet with Mia, and we've grown closer as sisters. She has helped clear up misunderstandings among our relatives and acquaintances. When they learned that our parents had taken my money without permission and failed to honor their promise of repayment, they distanced themselves from my parents. I am currently moving forward with legal proceedings for enforcement. Once approved, appropriate actions, such as freezing their bank accounts, will be taken. At work, I've been promoted and entrusted with greater responsibilities. On my days off, I've taken up photography as a hobby and started connecting with new friends. My relationship with my parents may never be repaired. Still, I believe I made the right choice. Sometimes, parting ways with family marks the beginning of a new life, and I've come to understand that now. Whenever I pass by the neighborhood near my childhood home, I still feel a twinge of pain, but it's no longer the intense anger or sorrow I once felt. It has softened into a gentle wistfulness. We all have the freedom to choose our own path, even if that path means saying goodbye to the people we once loved. I never imagined I would find a letter that would change everything while cleaning out my childhood bedroom. My name is Emily. Until that moment, I thought I completely understood my role and position within my family. I was the responsible, dependable one. I believed my purpose was to support my stepsister, Sandy, from behind as she chased her dreams. "Emily, don't forget to check the back of the closet." I heard my stepmother's voice from downstairs, with her usual mix of sweetness and authority. "If you find anything from your old school, we might be able to donate it." With a sigh, I pushed another box toward the door. I hadn't needed reminders about thorough cleaning in years, but that was just my stepmother's nature. She couldn't resist giving directions and maintaining control over everything. Even now, as I helped prepare them to move into a smaller house, she hadn't stopped. While organizing the nearly empty closet, my fingers brushed against something. Tucked behind the baseboard at the back of the closet was a slightly yellowed envelope, worn with age. I recognized it immediately. It had my name written in my late father's elegant handwriting. I pulled the letter out and carefully opened the seal. My hands trembled as I took extra care not to tear the old paper. The moment I saw the date at the top, my heart began to race. It had been written just weeks before my father passed away. To my beloved daughter, Emily, if you are reading this letter, it means my wish has not been fulfilled. I asked your stepmother to give you the college fund I had prepared for you, totaling $50,000. That money is meant for you alone, to help you pursue your dreams. It pained me to see your stepmother favor Sandy, dimming your light in the process. I hope this money helps you regain that brilliance. As I read on, tears blurred the words on the page. A college fund. My stepmother had always said, "We don't have enough money to send both of you to college." They told me that I needed to work to support Sandy's education. I accepted it as my role in the family, something that seemed natural at the time. But hidden within that role was a secret I hadn't known. My father and stepmother got married 5 years ago. When my father, who had raised me on his own, said he wanted to remarry, I was genuinely happy. I was excited about having a stepsister and a new mom, but that feeling didn't last long. My stepmother only cared for Sandy. The reason was simple. I wasn't her biological child. My father understood this too and often clashed with her. Whenever they fought, he would apologize to me and take me to places I wanted to go. It seemed like he was even considering divorce, but a year ago, he passed away in an accident. With my biological mother already gone, I essentially became an orphan. That's when my life truly became a nightmare. Let me get back to the story. As I stood in shock after reading the letter, I heard my stepmother's voice. Emily. Her voice was closer this time. She was probably wondering why I was taking so long upstairs. I quickly folded the letter and shoved it into my pocket. My heart pounded as I heard her footsteps approaching. For the past year, my stepmother had hidden the existence of this letter. While my stepsister Sandy attended her dream school, I worked as a waitress at a diner and took on cleaning jobs as well. Even seeing this, my stepmother never said a word. "Yes, I'm here," I called out in a voice calmer than I expected. When my stepmother entered the room, I pretended to have found some old documents. My hand stayed firmly on the letter in my pocket. My father had tried to give me a future, but my stepmother had stolen it from me. The person standing in front of her then was no longer the quiet, obedient daughter I used to be. Having learned the truth, I was becoming someone entirely new, someone seeking answers, and perhaps even revenge. I slowly looked around my childhood bedroom one last time. Nothing could remain as it was anymore. I had been blind to the truth hidden in this room all along. Now, I had found it. There was no turning back. I waited until dinner to bring out the letter. When I placed it on the kitchen table, my palms were damp with sweat. My stepmother, as she did every evening, was carefully arranging the placemats. Meanwhile, my stepsister Sandy was probably texting her college friends. While I was cleaning today, I found something interesting. I began, striving to keep my voice steady. A letter from my dad. My stepmother's hands froze in place. An ear-piercing silence filled the air. She didn't turn around, but I noticed the slight tension in her shoulders. "It's just a letter," I said. "But it talks about a college fund." I pushed the letter forward. "He left $50,000 for me." At those words, Sandy looked up in surprise. Her hands stopped texting on her phone. "Oh, my dear Emily." My stepmother began, her voice calm and almost condescending. Your father was a bit confused before he passed. He made a lot of promises, but perhaps he forgot about the date on that letter. But the letter was written just 2 weeks before he died. It clearly states that the money had already been set aside. I countered, refusing to back down. Do you really believe that? Sandy's voice was cold as she stared at me with wide eyes. Do you seriously think your father left you some secret fortune? Maybe he left you a yacht too, while he was at it. My stepmother cleared her throat. Your father and I did our best for this family. You understand how expensive college can be, don't you? Sandy had potential, and it was necessary to support her future. At those words, I couldn't hold back any longer. I stood up abruptly, the sound of the chair scraping against the floor echoing through the room. What about my potential? I've been working nonstop at that diner and as a cleaner. I've been giving half of my paycheck to this household, while Sandy gets to chase her dreams. My voice cracked with every word. Stop being so dramatic. My stepmother finally shouted, her voice rising in anger. We've all made sacrifices. Sandy needed things that were absolutely essential. Well, I didn't get anything out of it. At those words, Sandy gave a sarcastic smirk. But her smile looked slightly strained. It's not my fault you couldn't do well in school. Someone in this family had to grow and succeed. The casual cruelty in her words pierced my chest, making it hard to breathe. I glanced at my stepmother, holding onto a sliver of hope that she would acknowledge the unfairness and defend me. But she remained calm, pretending as if nothing had happened. At that moment, a phrase my father often said echoed in my mind. Focus on the present. What's done is done. I quietly picked up the letter, letting my father's words sink deep into my heart. They had stolen my future and were now trying to erase its existence. I could see it clearly. They were reverting to their usual roles. Sandy, the family's golden child, her mother, the enthusiastic audience to her success story. As I watched them, something inside me began to shift. It hardened into something resolute and unyielding. You're right, Dad, I said softly. What's done is done, but what happens next is up to me. The drive to Aunt Jody's house after that confrontation with my family felt like an escape from reality. I couldn't bear another minute of my stepmother's cold silence or Sandy's smug attitude. When I arrived at Jody's cottage, the garden was overgrown with weeds, and the wind chimes swayed gently. This place had always been a safe haven for me. As I opened the front door, the sweet scent of cookies baking in the kitchen greeted me. You found the letter, didn't you? Jody said as she looked at me, wiping her hands on her flour-dusted apron, her tone full of certainty. I couldn't speak, so I nodded silently. My voice felt stuck in my throat. Come, sit down, my dear. There's more you need to know. Jody pulled out a chair and gently urged me to sit. She disappeared into her study and returned a few moments later, holding an old envelope. She placed it on the table in front of me. Your father left behind more than just the college fund. There are bank statements, letters to trustees, and even recordings of conversations with your stepmother. It's all here. As I pulled out the documents and began examining them, my hands started to shake. The bank statements showed regular deposits made over the years, far exceeding the $50,000 I had been told about as the college fund. At that moment, I realized just how meticulously my father had planned, and just how much my stepmother had hidden. The documents revealed that, 3 months after my father's death, all the funds were transferred into a new account and used to pay for Sandy's college tuition. He knew she might do something like this, Jody said, her voice rising with anger. That's why he made me promise to keep copies of everything. Overwhelmed by confusion and fury, I asked, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Jody sighed deeply and replied, "Your father told me to wait until you found the letter on your own. He believed you needed to be ready to stand on your own first." At that moment, I heard the sound of a car door closing outside the window. Through the open window, Jody and I could hear my stepmother's voice. She was talking to a neighbor, saying she had something to discuss with me. Jody squeezed my hand tightly. "If you're not ready, you don't have to face her," she said gently. But I was already picking up the documents and organizing them. My heart was pounding, yet I felt a strange sense of calm. In fact, it felt like perfect timing. I heard the sound of my stepmother's footsteps climbing the front steps, followed by Sandy's exaggerated sigh. "Emily?" My stepmother called my name as she entered the room. But when she saw the documents spread out on the table, she froze, her face turning pale. "Is this what you were looking for?" I asked, holding up a bank statement. The records clearly showed the exact amounts withdrawn to pay for Sandy's college tuition. "This was my college fund. You had no right to touch it." Sandy opened her mouth to argue, but Jody cut her off. "It was her money. You stole it." My stepmother avoided my gaze and looked away as she muttered in a quiet voice. "I was planning to pay it back. With my paycheck? After you finished paying for Sandy's master's degree." I stood up from my chair, anger surging through me in a way I hadn't felt in years. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. I watched as the meticulously built wall of lies she had constructed began to crumble. At that moment, I realized something. What my father had left me wasn't just money. He had given me the truth, and with it, the power to finally set myself free. The fluorescent lights of the diner made everything look cold and lifeless. During my evening shift, I mechanically poured coffee into mugs, feeling a strange sense of detachment from reality. "Emily, are you okay? You look like you're about to collapse." A coworker, busy preparing another order beside me, asked with concern. "I'm fine," I replied, though my gaze was fixed on a figure visible through the diner's door. At that moment, the bell above the door jingled. Sandy walked in. She was wearing a designer coat she had proudly received as a Christmas gift from my stepmother. The sight of her made my stomach twist. Sandy slid onto a stool at the counter and looked straight at me. "I need to talk to you," she said. Her voice carried a note of irritation. "You've made Mom upset," she added. I stayed silent, continuing to wipe down the counter. I didn't look at her. "I'm working." "Even so," Sandy continued in a low voice, "Mom isn't working, and the mortgage on the house is overdue. Is this what you wanted?" At those words, I finally stopped and looked at Sandy. "What are you talking about?" My voice, surprisingly calm, cut through the diner's background chatter. "Mom took out a second mortgage to pay for my final semester." Sandy leaned closer to me. "She was counting on the income from your rent payments to cover it." In that moment, my mind went blank. The coffee pot in my hand slipped and shattered on the floor. Scalding liquid splashed against my ankles, but I barely registered the pain. All those shifts, all those extra hours, the money I had sweated and worked so hard to earn had once again disappeared into Sandy's education. Not once, but twice. "Emily, take 5 minutes." Doris, my coworker, appeared with a mop and began cleaning the floor. She spoke gently, and I nodded, making my way to the break room. Leaning against the wall, I opened my banking app with trembling hands. There it was, the record of the money I had deposited into my parents' account over the past 5 years. It was supposed to be for my education, for my future. But that, too, had been used for Sandy. The door opened quietly, and I turned to see Sandy standing there. She didn't look apologetic. Instead, her voice carried a hint of irritation as she said, "I get that you're upset about Dad's money, but just stop." I turned to face her, whispering with all the strength I could muster, "Stop." Sandy sighed and continued, looking me straight in the eyes. "Mom did it for me, because I have potential. You didn't." At that moment, the quiet anger buried deep within me ignited completely. "Is that so? Or maybe you just decided that before giving me a chance," I murmured, watching Sandy's expression stiffen for a moment. "That's unfair," I said quietly. stealing my future is beyond unfair. I untied my apron and told Doris that I'd be taking the rest of my shift off. "Emily, wait." Sandy's voice called after me, but I didn't turn around. My mind was spinning. I began mentally calculating the money I had stashed away in a separate account. It wasn't much, but it was probably enough to cover a year's living expenses. It would be enough for a down payment on a small apartment. I trusted that Aunt Jody would help me figure out the rest. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket with a message from my stepmother. "Family dinner tonight. We need to discuss your attitude." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed a brief reply. "There's nothing to discuss. I'm moving out. I've consulted a lawyer, and you'll be held accountable for using my inheritance." Then I blocked both of their numbers. I started the car and drove toward Aunt Jody's house. For the first time, the weight of lies and control that had been pressed on me for so many years felt like it was finally lifting. In its place, a vivid and heart-wrenching hope began to rise. I realized for the first time that revenge isn't about getting even. It's about setting yourself free. I sat on the bed in Aunt Jody's guest room, staring at the list of apartments on my phone. My vision blurred slightly as the realization hit me. This was the first step toward a new life. Surrounded by hastily packed boxes, I had already completed the process of renting a small studio apartment downtown. It wasn't spacious, but it was affordable on my diner wages. And that was enough for the start of my freedom. Just as my finger hovered over the call button to contact the landlord about my move-in date, the silence was shattered by a loud, insistent knock that echoed through the house. "Emily, I know you're in there." My stepmother's voice, sharp and desperate, rang out. Aunt Jody appeared at the front door with a stern expression. "You don't have to talk to her," she said firmly. But I had already made up my mind. After 5 days of ignoring calls and messages, I couldn't avoid this any longer. It was time to put an end to this. When Aunt Jody opened the door, my stepmother stormed in, her anger on full display. Sandy lingered in the doorway, hesitating as if unsure whether to join the scene or merely observe it like a theater performance. But I knew in my heart, this was truly the end. My stepmother brandished a stack of documents, her voice rising as she said, "I've calculated every expense we've incurred on you since you turned 18. Rent, utilities, groceries. You owe us nearly $40,000. At her words, I laughed. But it wasn't a laugh of humor. It was one of sadness and disappointment intertwined. "You're handing me a bill, branding me as ungrateful, for merely existing." My voice trembled, but my eyes remained fixed on my stepmother. "You stole $50,000 from me, and now you're telling me that I owe you something." As I spat out those words, the room seemed to warp around me. My stepmother's face flushed red as she shouted back, "We made an investment. In your futures. On the one with more potential." At that moment, the dam inside me broke, and everything I had been holding back poured out. Don't you dare decide from the beginning that I wasn't worth investing in. I needed a family who believed in me just once. A family who would give me a chance. I stared coldly at my stepmother. "Your so-called investment robbed me of my life." I reached into my bag and quietly pulled out my father's letter, unfolding it with deliberate care. "When you lied about this," I said, holding up the letter, "was that your investment?" I locked eyes with my stepmother before turning to face Sandy. "You used my rent money to fund your education. Have you ever stopped to think about how much I sacrificed so you could chase your dreams? Or were you too busy looking down on me from your pedestal?" My words brought a chilling silence to the room. In that quiet, I saw them both clearly for the first time. My stepmother's desperate need for control, Sandy's smug sense of superiority. Everything was laid bare in that moment. "I'm leaving." Taking a deep breath, I calmly announced, "I've already signed a lease and I've enrolled in night classes for the upcoming semester." My stepmother's voice rose sharply. "You can't do that." I stood firm and replied quietly, "I can." Dad believed in me. "Fine. Then go. But don't think for a second that you'll be welcomed back." My stepmother snapped coldly. I simply looked at my family in silence, feeling something click firmly into place deep within me. "Then," I replied quietly, "that's fine. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore either." I turned and began walking across the wooden floors of Jody's house. With each echoing step, I left behind everything I thought I needed and moved toward the life ahead of me. Moving day came with a harsh winter rain. Using the money I had saved from my diner shifts, I managed to withdraw what I needed before my stepmother froze my bank account. But since she had reported my car as stolen, I had to leave it behind. Standing in the empty room of my new studio apartment, I stared at the few boxes I had packed. It felt like I had lost everything. Yet, at the same time, I believed in myself for taking the first step toward freedom and the future ahead. My phone buzzed with a message from Sandy. "Mom's in the hospital. She had a panic attack from the stress? I hope you're happy." I deleted the message without replying, but my hands were trembling. As I opened a box filled with kitchen supplies, a growing sense of unease spread through my chest. The diner had cut everyone's hours, and the first tuition payment for my night classes was due in 2 weeks. The narrow walls of the apartment felt like they were closing in on me, making it hard to breathe. Just then, a sudden knock at the door made me flinch. When I opened the door, Sandy was standing there. She looked older than I had ever seen her. "Mom's sick," she said without any greeting. Then, in a hoarse voice, she added, "We might lose the house." She explained that the bank had pushed them toward a second mortgage. Meanwhile, Sandy said she'd have to drop out of her master's program. The shock made me grip the doorframe for support. "That's not my fault," I said reflexively. Without saying a word, Sandy pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of my stepmother lying in a hospital bed. "Dad would be ashamed of you for doing this to Mom," she said. Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. "Don't you dare use Dad against me," I shouted. "Dad wanted us to be together. Instead, you destroyed everything." My voice cracked as I forced the words out. "When you stole my future." Sandy shook her head sadly. "Mom gave your future to someone who could use it better. You know we were right." The moment she said those words, I slammed the door shut. But her words lingered, echoing in my mind. The narrow apartment felt like a prison. The sound of rain hitting the window reminded me of everything I had lost. My savings would barely cover next month's rent, and the course catalog for my night classes seemed to mock me from the kitchen counter. At 2:47 a.m., the microwave clock blinked as my phone lit up again. Sandy had posted a photo of my stepmother in the hospital on social media. The caption read, "Some people choose revenge over family. Please pray for Mom." Comments flooded in from family, relatives, and friends, all condemning me. Words like, "shocked by her coldness," were repeated over and over. Even my usually kind cousin Lisa had written, "How could you do this?" I curled up on the bare mattress, clutching my father's letter to my chest. Had I been wrong? Maybe they were right. Maybe I had been selfish. Perhaps I never deserved to want more than the future they decided for me. As the rain continued to lash against the window, I found myself questioning why I ever thought I could escape. Exactly 1 month after leaving home, I received a certified letter. It bore the official letterhead of Smith Associates law firm. At first, I hesitated to open it, assuming it was another ploy by my stepmother to drag me back home. But as I read the contents, I was stunned. "Dear Ms. Smith, as the trustee of Ella Mitchell's estate, it is my duty to deliver this letter upon confirmation of your independent residence." My hands trembled as I continued reading. There was another account my father had left behind, separate from the college fund. It included real estate and investments in stocks. It was more than enough to ensure I could live independently and pursue my own life. My father had prepared everything to help me forge my own path. Less than 2 hours later, there was a knock at the door. It was my stepmother. "I heard about the inheritance," she said, pushing past me to enter the apartment. Sandy followed close behind, and together they surrounded me, forming their usual wall of accusations. "What's this all about?" "The lawyer called us first," Sandy said with a smug grin. My stepmother added coldly, "It wasn't just a courtesy. It was a warning. Considering your recent behavior, I'm filing to become your guardian. You're clearly unfit to manage this amount of money in your current mental state." The moment I heard those words, the room felt like it was spinning. "You have no right to do that," I shouted. "I have every right, and I fully intend to," my stepmother replied, pulling out a folder. Inside were records of my so-called unstable behavior, statements from family and friends, and even medical records. She shoved the folder toward me, and I began flipping through the carefully curated evidence. "You've been planning this ever since you found out about the first letter," I said. "We're trying to protect you," my stepmother said calmly. But in that moment, everything about the pattern that had bound my life became crystal clear. Protecting me meant forcing me back into a life where I worked until I broke, funding Sandy's dreams while letting my own wither and die. And thinking I wasn't worth investing in was a decision they made without my consent. It was now undeniable. My stepmother would never stop trying to extinguish my dreams. Holding my father's letter tightly, I stood my ground. "If you don't leave, I'll call the police. And I'll take these documents to a real lawyer to prove that you're trying to control me again." My stepmother's face twisted in frustration, but she slowly turned toward the door. Sandy threw a parting shot over her shoulder. "You'll regret this decision, Emily." As they walked toward the door, I thought of my father, of his careful plans and his belief in me. For the first time in my life, I had said, no. A year later, I was in the university library, surrounded by textbooks and the gentle hum of students, preparing for my final exams when a message from Aunt Jody appeared on my phone. "Check the letter. I was cleaning out your father's old desk and found an unfinished letter he wrote just days before he passed. Unlike the other letters, this one abruptly cuts off mid-sentence. What caught my attention, though, was a book beside it. Your father's well-worn copy of Jane Eyre. He once promised to pass it on to you. If you want it, it's yours." That evening, I received the book from Jody. As I flipped through the yellowed pages, a small envelope fell out. Inside was a photograph I had never seen before. It was a picture of my father in his younger days, proudly holding up the key to his first apartment. On the back of the photo, he had written, "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. Now it's your turn." I thought about Sandy, who had dropped out of her master's program last week and started working as a waitress. She had sent me a single text message. I understand now. I didn't reply, but I understood the meaning behind her words. The two of them had sold the house and moved from their spacious family home into a cramped apartment. Their new place was a single unit in an old building, with a kitchen and living room combined. My stepmother had started working part-time at a small local supermarket, where she could now be seen working as a cashier. It was her first job in 20 years, and a far cry from her once elegant demeanor. Their lives had changed completely, forcing both of them to confront the choices they had made. I could see how deeply their circumstances had shifted, and in some small way, I felt relief that this transformation might have taught them something. I had worked with the lawyer my father had introduced me to and successfully reclaimed the inheritance my stepmother had misused. I also obtained a restraining order against her, ensuring I would no longer have to deal with her. As I traced the words on my father's letter with my finger, a thought struck me. My stepmother had always believed that if I faced hardships, I would crumble and eventually rebuild myself according to her design. But I hadn't followed her expectations. Instead, I had carved my own path. My grades from the first semester were proof that my father had seen my potential all along. In my new environment, I found people who valued me for who I was. The book club I started at the local coffee shop had grown beyond a simple hobby group, becoming a close-knit circle of friends. They accepted and supported me not for what I could offer, but for who I was. Next month, we would be reading Jane Eyre at my suggestion, and I had one more thing to look forward to. Just then, my phone buzzed again. A message from Sandy appeared on the screen. "Can we talk?" It was a short sentence, but her emotions came through clearly. I picked up my father's photo and looked at his proud smile once more. His smile gave me a new sense of certainty. Revenge wasn't about hurting someone. It was about saving yourself. And it was also about stopping the act of living someone else's story and starting to write your own. I sent a reply to Sandy, Tuesday at 2 p.m., Oak Street Coffee Shop. This might be a new step forward. Perhaps Sandy was ready to start her own story. Or maybe she wasn't. Either way, it didn't matter. I had the key to my own life now, and a smile I could be proud of. And I had a new chapter of my own to write. I slipped my father's photo between the pages of Jane Eyre and headed home to study. The future was waiting for me. And this time, it was entirely my own. I am Jennifer. I am 39 years old and work in the cleaning industry. I have been working for nearly 20 years at a company that provides cleaning services for office buildings, and I am a single woman in my 40s. The reason I chose this job was to support my sick mother. I live with my mother and my sister, and we were raised in a single-parent family. At one point, my mother became seriously ill, and I had to quit vocational school to focus on her treatment. I looked for a job that would allow me to care for my mother and ended up as a cleaner, which I am now truly grateful for. The company president and my older colleagues understand my situation and support me, affectionately calling me Jenny. My younger colleagues are also adorable. I am convinced there is no better workplace for me. My mother passed away when I was 25 and my sister was 19. Her death came towards the end of autumn, with the onset of winter. The grief of losing my mother led me to take more time off work. However, the company becomes busy during the year-end cleaning season. Even then, my colleagues would say, "We'll wait until you are feeling better." Their concern was appreciated. I wished I could have stayed home. I really wanted to follow in my mother's footsteps, but I have a sister to look after. After losing our mother early, I decided to motivate myself to continue working for my constantly worrying sister. At that time, she was attending university, and I continued to provide the support she needed. As her studies progressed, I helped her with textbook expenses and drove her home when she returned late. When she found a job, I celebrated by giving her a suit. My income was small, but I tried to take over the role of our mother. After our mother's death, my sister suggested I quit cleaning and find a better job due to her dissatisfaction with our living situation and social appearance. I was emotionally unable to consider changing jobs at the time, and her words deeply hurt me. However, my colleagues at work always supported me warmly. Later, my sister worked hard on her job search and was finally hired by a large company. This company is well known, often mentioned in TV commercials and internet advertisements. Her first salary was almost double mine. Her joy was like a child receiving many Christmas gifts, and she excitedly showed everyone, saying, "Look, big sister, I surpassed you in just 1 month. Look at this pay slip, isn't it amazing? Big sister, you should quit your cleaning job and get a good job like me." That's not a nice way to say it. I really like my current job. But if you think about the salary, it's clearly different. Even so, I was truly relieved that her efforts were recognized. I sat in front of our mother's portrait and mentioned how my sister has become a respectable woman from the bottom of my heart. But her behavior at the company gradually caused problems. She achieved results at work and took pride in the praise from her boss. Right after joining, she had the chance to participate in a large project, and as a sister, I was proud. but her condescending attitude towards those around her worsened by the day. I am expected to perform well and I can handle the work, but my peers are a bit lacking in learning ability. I hate it when their shortcomings lower my evaluation. She made such comments without hesitation. It seemed she was taking her workplace and society lightly. If this continued, she might stumble. Therefore, I admonished her about her attitude. I think there's no big difference among newcomers. Everyone is on the same starting line. However, my sister retorted with a sneer, "Don't act so high and mighty. You're just a lowly educated cleaner." I replied irritably. Because I have experience, I understand that there's not much difference in people's abilities. Really? Are there any college-educated newcomers at your company? Before you lecture me, go tell them they're wasting their lives. My sister laughed dismissively and went out for a drink. I was worried she might face difficulties someday. However, her excessive self-esteem only grew stronger. What started as a sense of superiority over having a higher salary than me turned into a distorted self-assessment, warping her personality. She said anything she wanted to me. At first, I overlooked it as excitement about her new workplace, but gentle warnings had no effect. I even tried scolding her strictly, but unfortunately, there was no change. I may have mishandled my relationship with my sister, and I began to lose confidence in myself. Years have passed since then. I continue to work as a cleaner. My sister seems to be progressing well in her career, but her disdainful personality has only worsened. She moved in with her boyfriend and then married him. His personality is as self-conscious as my sister's, and he is a troublesome presence for me. Her husband is quite young, and he feels like a different generation to me. When I was introduced to him, his first conversation with me was, "Are you really a cleaner?" Yes, I am passionate about my job, and I enjoy it very much. Really? But isn't that job dirty? I don't really want to imagine it. It must smell bad. Then, my sister added, "That's true. Just thinking about it is unbearable. It's unclean, and it's a fact that it's a poor and unattractive job. But it can't be helped, right? She's my family after all." Sorry. Stunned by her words, I hardly remember what happened after that. After he left, I yelled at my sister. "That's really rude. What do you mean by it can't be helped because I'm your family? Both he and you shouldn't judge people by their work or income." When I got angry, my sister argued back in surprise. "Shut up. You quit vocational school, and I graduated from university. He's also a college graduate. You can't help but be told that. You have a low income and just content yourself with a lower-class job." After my sister stormed out, I cried in frustration and sadness. I dropped out of vocational school because my mother was ill. My sister knows this. Yet, she said such things. My income is low, but I managed to support my sister's education expenses. I worked hard to fill our mother's shoes. The mistake was in the way I interacted with my sister. As I looked in the mirror through tears, the word ugly she used bothered me. My face resembles my sister's. I might not be called beautiful, but I shouldn't be considered that bad. Perhaps I have been neglecting my appearance a bit. I wonder if she would change her perception if I paid more attention to my appearance and changed. However, no matter how much I tidy up, it won't change my sister's character. Her marriage to someone with similar values has only intensified her excessive self-awareness. I've been consulting with my colleagues, but I feel that there's nothing more I can do about my relationship with my sister. Amidst this, I received a postcard from my sister and her husband. It said, "We're having a housewarming party." This was news to me. Judging from the address, it seems to be a detached house. I felt a sense of distance. If she had told me, I would have congratulated her and helped with the move. I decided to call her after a long time. "Hello, I received your postcard." "Oh, you got it." I could hear my sister's cheerful voice over the phone. "Look, it's a detached house. At our young age, it's because I'm successful. No one else could have done it. Yes, that's really great. It was still a boastful conversation, but I felt a sense of nostalgia and listened carefully to my sister. I started talking about myself later. Actually, my company just got the cleaning contract for your company. We might see each other sometimes. Oh, that's great. Not many chances to get into such a big building other than cleaning, huh? She should have stopped at "that's great." Also, I have a boyfriend now. Really? My sister sounded surprised. Yes, he's older and really wonderful. After hearing your words, I worked hard on my skincare, and he fell in love with me at first sight, I joked. Then my sister said, "It's thanks to me, right? That's a big achievement." Well, she's not entirely without merit. By the way, I want to introduce him to you. He's looking forward to meeting you, so enjoy the party. Okay. I'm looking forward to it. On the day of the eagerly awaited party, when I arrived at my sister's house, I could already hear the sounds of enjoyment. Unfortunately, my boyfriend couldn't come, but when I let them know I had arrived, my sister's voice, which had been bright, suddenly darkened as she said, "What? You actually came?" I wondered what had happened. You understand your own profession, right? About work? About the cleaning job? This is a new house. So, I don't want someone as dirty as a cleaner in my clean house. What? Labeling cleaners as dirty and not wanting them in a new house? I couldn't understand that reasoning. My mind went completely blank. Being in such a dirty job, you should be more reserved in these situations, right? Everyone at your workplace must think the same. Don't you have any common sense, sis? Aren't you being rude? Apologize. As my anger started to boil over, I felt it swelling inside me. Is it natural to hold back because the job is dirty? Rude? Should I apologize? No way, I shouted loudly, reaching my limit. You look down on people too much. That's too rude. I might have endured it if it were just about me. But to insult the people at my workplace as well, that was unforgivable. I could see my sister flinching at my strong stance. She's usually aggressive towards quiet people, but becomes timid when fought back against. Do you really think it's okay to judge people by their profession? You're the one who's truly lacking in common sense. Apologize. Huh, why are you suddenly angry? I won't forgive you. How could you become such a terrible person? Mom would definitely be sad. You're trash. Trash? You're the trash. Your boyfriend is trash too, isn't he? He must not be doing a decent job. A normal person wouldn't date someone who's a cleaner. If you weren't my real sister, I wouldn't want anything to do with someone so dirty. I would have abandoned you long ago if we weren't family. That's my line. I'm cutting ties. Never involve me again. Okay. Then goodbye. It was a childish argument, but I could no longer handle it maturely. My sister started to say something, but I ignored her and left the room. I had decided to cut ties with my sister. She was my only sibling, but I couldn't bear it any longer. Because I'm a cleaner, my sister doesn't treat me as a human. Beyond being sisters, our values differ too greatly, so it's better for both of us not to be involved anymore. It's okay. My sister is already an adult. This is goodbye. I have sorted out my feelings. Several months have passed since I decided to cut ties with my sister. By some coincidence, I was assigned to clean the building where my sister works. It might have been the president showing consideration, but I was reluctant to go. However, it's my policy to give my all to the work I'm given. Suppressing my feelings, I went to my sister's company. The building was truly vast and large. With such a large space, I probably wouldn't run into my sister. Even if we did meet, she might not notice me. Thinking this made me feel a bit better. Pushing a cart loaded with cleaning supplies, I tried to focus on cleaning. That afternoon, while mopping the floor, a group of about 5 people were talking while drinking canned coffee at a vending machine. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience. Please think more before you act. Considering how long you've been in this team, you should report and consult before it becomes a problem for all of us. Yes, I understand. This quarter, the same mistake has happened 3 times already. I'm sorry. The person who was apologizing had made a mistake, and everyone pitched in to cover for it. Well done. Holding that thought, I consciously avoided looking at them and continued mopping. Your peers are already team leaders, and some are even section chiefs. You should try a bit harder. I'm sorry. Yes, she was receiving harsh words. It might be time to forgive her. I wanted to mop past that group and go to the other side of the corridor. Afterward, they scolded the woman again and all returned to the office. When the group passed in front of me, I saw a familiar face. Yes, it was my sister. My sister was the one being scolded for making a mistake. No way. My sister also looked at me for a moment, her face losing color. However, she said nothing and quickly followed her team as they left. As I continued to work, my sister crossed my mind several times. The sister who was supposed to be the elite among her peers now looked like a burden to the company, left behind. She seemed to be making frequent mistakes at work and apologizing to those involved each time. Through my cleaning work, I have witnessed many human interactions in various places. This is my intuition. My sister's boasting about being excellent was just vanity. Maybe her work was going well at first. As I had predicted, while she was complacent, her colleagues surpassed her and pulled the rug out from under her. Her condescending nature made this unsurprising. However, I don't need to worry. My sister will no longer rely on me. We are now strangers who have severed ties. A few days after learning this fact, I saw my sister again. While I was cleaning the lobby, my sister came down from the elevator with someone. Oh darn, I forgot the paper bag with the samples. I'll go get it. Please wait here. It's okay, I'll go. I'm useless anyway. In return, take care of me when you get promoted. Again with that, I'll go get it. The man who seemed to be her younger colleague cheerfully got on the elevator and went back to retrieve the forgotten item. And yet she used to claim to be competent and insult me a lot. Watching my sister cower in a corner of the lobby from a distance, I felt pity for her. While I was wiping the leaves of a lobby plant, one of my colleagues approached and whispered, "Hey, isn't that your sister you talked about before?" Ah, yes. It seems she's messing up. Please keep quiet about it. My colleague looked worriedly at my sister for a while before returning to their place. Perhaps bothered by our sympathetic gaze, my sister came toward me angrily while I was still in the corner. "Hey, cleaner, what are you doing?" "I'm cleaning." "No, why are you here?" "Because it's my job." When I answered coldly, my sister's face turned furious. "Don't you dare tell my husband that I'm embarrassing myself at work. You understand, right?" It was as if she was venting her work stress on me. The stares of the people around us were drawn to my sister as she raised her voice. I whispered quietly, being mindful of the surrounding people, "You're drawing attention." "Shut up. Don't order me around, you low-educated person." She couldn't help but be aware of the onlookers. "Please keep it down." As I tried to take my sister's hand, she snapped and said, "Don't touch me. You're dirty," while pushing my hand away forcefully. While frantically wiping the area I touched, she continued to hurl insults. "You're threatening me, aren't you? You want money, right? How much are you asking for?" "Threats? Money? What are you talking about?" I asked, bewildered. "Don't talk to my husband about this. Do you understand? You idiot," she yelled. "Oh, I see. Are you embarrassed about making many mistakes at work, or is it because your career progression is slow?" "Which one do you not want me to mention?" I countered. "Both, obviously," my sister shouted. She seemed genuinely afraid that I would discuss her workplace behavior with her husband. "By the way, are you also putting on a facade for your husband?" I provocatively asked. "Shut up. "What can trash like you say?" she vehemently retorted. Such harsh words, calling someone trash. My sister continued to hurl insults at me without concern for the eyes of others. It seems the company is a significant source of stress for her. Perhaps belittling me is her way of lightening her heart. I am not your punching bag. Just then, a man's voice from behind intervened. "Hey, that's no way to treat a cleaner." Quiet. "Huh? Who?" My sister reacted and finally noticed the commotion around her, looking around. Unable to tolerate her extreme rudeness any longer, a man from the crowd stepped forward. A well-dressed elderly man with gray hair, his appearance suggested a high social status. Seeing the man, my sister instantly became flustered. The man stood by my side and gently placed a hand on my back. "You shouldn't use foul language like calling someone dirty or incompetent. That's unacceptable. Please apologize to her." This is just a quarrel between siblings." I snapped back. We were supposed to have cut off family ties, remember? "Shut up," my sister retorted. She acted softly towards the gray-haired man, but was harsh towards me. Watching this dual behavior, the man intervened. "If it's a family matter, then I am involved too." "What?" My sister was surprised. "Nice to meet you." "Actually, I'm dating your sister." My sister's eyes widened. "I am the executive director from a related company of yours and a board member of your company. It was unfortunate that I didn't get to introduce myself earlier," he continued. What? My sister was confused and couldn't hide her turmoil. I glanced at him disapprovingly and muttered, "Was there really a need to come out now?" "Now is the only time," he cheerfully said. "Is that true?" My sister asked in a frightened voice. Her reaction was natural. The person before her was an executive at her company. "It's true. When we were negotiating the cleaning contract for this building, I accompanied him. He fell for me when he handled the contract," I explained. "No way!" My sister exclaimed in disbelief. "It's true. When the president couldn't explain the details during the contract signing, she clarified everything precisely, and I was smitten and asked her out," he added. A gasp of surprise echoed from the crowd that had gathered in the lobby. "This is so embarrassing. I heard you said that no decent person would date a cleaner, and that they must be up to no good." "No, I never said that. Regardless, you need to apologize for the harsh words you said to your sister earlier," he insisted firmly. Shocked, my sister was at a loss for words. "Are you Jenny's sister? Please don't make your sister worry about you too much." My colleague, who had been cleaning the lobby, joined in, and colleagues from other floors gathered around. My sister was completely isolated and looked exhausted as she apologized to me. "I'm sorry," she muttered despairingly. Her voice lacked the energy and vitality it once had. Only emptiness lingered. Later, my sister was transferred from the parent company to a remote branch of a subsidiary. This move was not influenced by my boyfriend. After being overheard insulting me, my sister panicked and started making successive mistakes at work. As her position at the workplace became unstable, this measure was deemed necessary. Effectively, it marked the end of her career. Learning of this, my sister's husband came to me in desperation, seeking a resolution. "You're dating a director at my wife's company, right? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Please, can you restore my wife to her former position?" He pleaded desperately. Unfortunately, my response was a regretful, "I'm sorry." His plea did not resonate with me. With the reduced income from the demotion, they couldn't afford the mortgage for the new house they had built and likely had to let it go. My involvement with my sister and her husband's subsequent circumstances no longer exists. Meanwhile, I have married my fiancé and we are living happily in our newly built home. I continue with the cleaning business, though my on-site work has decreased. That's because I took over the management of the cleaning company and became its president. Despite many worries and much anxiety, I love the company I have worked for so long and accepted the offered position as president. Regardless of what anyone says, I intend to continue working proudly at this beloved company. My stepfather, Dan, moved his adult daughter into our home, where I had spent my childhood, without telling me anything. He then packed my belongings, took my bag, changed the locks, and locked me out of the house while I was at work. Moreover, my mother is siding with him. It doesn't matter to her if she angers him. I tried to build a smooth relationship with him, but it was impossible. I have always felt inferior and burdensome in this home. Over the many years he has lived in this house, I have kept silent, but he has always tested me. This time, I cannot accept it. My mother will call me as soon as she wakes up, so there is a bit of time due to the time difference. Even if I can avoid giving her an ultimatum, I am ready to resist. I will not yield to her attempts to connect me with the wrong people, despite the guilt she has made me feel over the years. Dan's arrogance and rudeness are evident. How could he move his daughter into my home without permission? It must seem absurd to you too. It does to me as well. I told Dan 2 weeks ago that his 23-year-old daughter, who has a job and is an adult, does not need to live with us. However, she continued to stay for a long time, acting as if she had moved in. I suggested that she share the costs with me, but Dan said she needed time with him, and that she was strictly a guest and so did not need to pay. He accused me of just being jealous. I wanted to argue, but for the sake of family peace, I chose to maintain my inner peace and remain silent. However, the problem then shifted to so-called privacy issues. You wouldn't believe it, but Dan's daughter demanded her privacy be respected. This is my parents' house, not hers. When I entered the living room while she was on a video call, she got angry. If it's a private call, she should use another room instead of the shared living room. As she left in anger, Dan entered the living room, and I complained to him about her blatant rudeness. Her staying in the house made me uncomfortable, and I suggested we only meet when I am not home or when she is outside the house. He became furious and accused me of being ungrateful. He told me that the issues with my father were because of my lack of consideration. I was astonished at his audacity. I wonder why he brought up my father. I did to his daughter what she did to me. I told my mother what he said, but I felt it was unreasonable to expect her support. My mother said I was misunderstanding Dan and insisted we should both apologize, but I refused to apologize to him and continued to ignore him. Last week, when my mother came home, I planned to force them to choose either they leave or I would. This is my father's house, where I had spent my childhood. However, due to his most unforgivable actions, I had to make some decisions. When I returned home, my belongings were packed, and one suitcase had a note attached. It was written in Dan's handwriting. There is no other choice. He was fed up with my attitude. He did not want to choose between me and his daughter and decided to kick me out. It saddens me how quickly our relationship has changed. When he first married my mother, he was a very good person and tried his best to act as a father to me. We got along very well, and I could consult him about anything if there were problems. One day, when his daughter came to our house and told me she had moved to town and that they wanted to spend more time with her father, I was emotional. I was excited to have a new sister. I was happy to welcome her and tried to make her feel like we are real sisters. But from the first meeting, I understood that she did not think well of me. She was uninterested in me. She pretended to like me when our parents were around, but ignored me when we were alone. I had not talked to my parents about this issue. I also distanced myself from her, trying not to involve her too much. As time passed, she effectively moved into my house. During those days, Dan removed his mask as a good father. I feel that he became too familiar with us, and his true self began to appear. He also seems to be taking advantage of the fact that my mother is currently abroad. My mother often stays abroad for months for her job. She recently returned to work. After my father died, she took a long vacation. She needed to take care of me. She ran a small business to support us, but after remarrying, she wanted to pursue her career again. As her daughter, I am old enough to take care of myself, and she probably thought Dan would support me if I needed help. I strongly support my mother's decision and am very proud of her. However, her actions seem to have triggered Dan to start abusing me. The note stated that I could only return home if I apologized to his daughter, and if not, I would need to find a place to live on my own. I had lived with rude people previously, and since Dan seemed interested in learning proper manners by being in a pampered state, I intend to teach that to him. I am not sure how to deal with this yet, but I do not intend to leave. I will contact my mother to explain the situation without being kicked out of the house by a man who do not even own it. I will tell my stepsister that we will not live together, and it is necessary for her to listen to me even just once. I do not intend to listen to her, so she should follow my instructions. What I do next will depend on how she responds. This is a choice between resolving this peacefully or having family issues. I prefer peace over harboring problems. Am I overreacting? Am I acting out of jealousy? I try to look at this issue from as many perspectives as possible. How can you justify evicting someone without notice while they are at work? Isn't that disrespectful? Isn't that an uncontrollable brazenness? The more I think about this matter, the more problems I feel. I've decided to stop being kind. I am deeply considering what actions I should take. Since this incident, I have remained calm. I am confident that the choices I have made are the most appropriate under the current circumstances. I have always tried to behave courteously, but the people I interact with do not recognize it. As soon as my mother woke up, she called to ask what had happened. I hoped she might be surprised or perhaps agree with me, but neither happened. Instead, my mother questioned where I went wrong and said she wasn't surprised by my actions because Dan had warned her about this issue beforehand. Dan had told her that I was rude and living together was impossible. Knowing that Dan lied to her, I was trembling with anger. So I questioned my mother about what she thought of it, whether it was towards me, her daughter, or towards the man she had just married. She answered that the time spent together doesn't matter. She said she was simply thinking of everyone in her family. She had been informed in advance that Dan planned to welcome his daughter into our home. Hearing that made me feel like leaving home. But on the day Dan decided to welcome his daughter, he packed my bags, changed the locks, and kicked me out of the house. Dan and my mother were planning to replace me with his problematic daughter. I told my mother I was extremely disappointed in her decision. I criticized her for loving her new family more than me. She was clearly ready to forget her past, me, and to accept her future, which is Dan and his daughter. She tried desperately to deny it and explain, but I had no intention of listening to her words. I indicated to her that I would give her a chance to correct the situation before doing something irreversible. Also, I told them they had 24 hours to leave my father's house. They should never come back, and only my mother was welcome to return. She reacted angrily and eventually tried to shift all the blame onto me. According to her, I had become a changed and ungrateful person. She asked how much I intended to push away the people who support me. She even accused and blamed me for using drugs. Can you believe it? She was convinced that I was consuming some irrational substances. Hearing that, I could only laugh. Dan carried out his plan and succeeded in kicking me out of the house while my mother was not home. He was truly like the stepmother from a fairy tale. After the call with my mother, I started to prepare for work, but I couldn't concentrate without music. Because when the music stopped, the exchange with my mother wouldn't leave my mind. The thought was so strong that I began to tremble. That led to me actually experiencing a severe panic attack. I hadn't been in such a state since my father's funeral. I couldn't believe my father was dead and had days where I saw him in my dreams. At the memorial service, I saw someone who looked like him, but it turned out to be someone else. Now, they are trying to pull me away from precious memories with my father, who cared so much for me. That house is not theirs, and I have no intention of retracting my statement. Dan did not know that the house was in my name. I should have seen his face when I kicked him and his ignorant daughter out of the house. I felt really relieved to be able to drive them away. They revealed their true selves, and I think I handled it appropriately. Dan's plan might have looked something like this. One day, Dan met my wealthy mother. She owned a beautiful and spacious house, and my presence as her daughter could potentially be a hindrance. I had the power to easily remove him from my mother's life. I would have prevented him from transferring the house deed into his name. Therefore, he pretended to be a good person, encouraged my mother to return to work, and gained my trust. As a result, I became friendly to him. I started living with him, feeling safe. But he succeeded in driving a wedge between my mother and me. After we were divided, he used his daughter to make me feel unwelcome. He began to emotionally distance himself from me and directed his affection towards his daughter. This led to my dissatisfaction, anger, and irrational actions. He misunderstood that the house was in my mother's name, and his main goal was to drive me out because I was young. My mother only saw his kindness towards me and believed it. She deeply trusted him, even entrusting her life to him. She would quickly believe that her own daughter harbored hostility towards her stepdaughter. However, her partner was not a good person. My mother dislikes acknowledging her mistakes. He exploited this fact to deceive her. His ultimate plan was to live in the house with his daughter while my mother was away. In a few months, he planned to have my mother transfer the deed of the house into his name. And soon, he plans to proceed with a divorce from my mother, either to acquire half of her assets or to leave her and cash out the assets. However, there might be people who want to defend him. I need to listen to their opinions and reveal the truth. If I had allowed my stepsister to live at home, things might have been different. But she needed to be the right kind of person to live with, and she wasn't. She was very difficult to handle. When using the kitchen, she never cleaned up after herself. Money often went missing when she was in the house. She entered my room multiple times without my permission and used my belongings without asking. I always place things in specific spots, so I notice immediately if something is amiss. Because she touched my belongings without permission, I never intended to live with such a person again. Let's go back to what happened earlier this week. I went to gather all the necessary documents to proceed with the eviction legally. I didn't have time to play around, and I had no intention of leaving any room for them to return. It took a little time, but with the help of a friend, I was able to handle everything quickly. When everything was ready, I immediately headed home. I knocked on the door, and my stepsister opened it but quickly tried to close it, saying, "You are not welcome here." I pretended to be sad and told her I had come to apologize. She looked surprised and confused. It was probably because my behavior was so out of character. Then, her father Dan appeared behind her and asked what I was doing. I told them it would take about 8 hours to move everything out of the house. He had a lot of furniture, so I was being quite generous. I told him I was coming back and showed him the court order. And when I said, "If you don't pack up, I'll have to force you out, and everything of value that you own will be discarded. My only concern is getting you out of the house," I meant it, but he didn't seem to take my words seriously. He said that I couldn't take such actions without my mother's permission. According to him, all my actions were illegal, and he intended to have me arrested. At that moment, I told him, "If you want, you can call as many times as you need." However, all they could do was mock me. They eventually realized the court order was genuine and understood that they had no choice but to leave. As a result, I succeeded in evicting them from the house I had lived in since childhood. Still, I wanted to relax and unwind in my father's house without any disturbances. The events of the past few days had been very tough, so I needed some time to relax. My mother had been asking me to apologize to Dan and his family, but since I wouldn't do as she wished, she seemed to have decided to punish me. I ignored her calls for days, but I had nothing in particular to say to her. About 2 weeks later, when my mother returned home, she hit me for the first time. There was a reason for her behavior. I had scheduled a dental checkup, but after the examination, I found out I had to pay for everything myself. The dentist told me that my medical insurance was no longer valid. I was shocked by this news, as I had been insured all along. After several phone calls, it became clear that my mother had removed me as a beneficiary of her medical insurance. Moreover, she had never informed me about it. It can definitely be said that she did this on purpose. I had to pay the full amount myself, which confused me greatly. I felt anger towards her treatment, but I had no intention of letting her have her way. If she wanted to talk, she should do it face to face. Afterwards, I sorted out the insurance paperwork. Later on, I signed out of all the streaming subscriptions my mother was using. My mother is not very tech-savvy, and I got her hooked on streaming services. When she wanted to watch her favorite shows online, she asked me to help set up her account. I wanted to save money, but considering what she had done for me, I decided to add her to my account. It could be said that we had a symbiotic relationship. However, that is a thing of the past now. Later, the streaming subscription was canceled because she failed to pay the usage fees. If I had to pay all my medical bills myself, I thought she should pay for her subscription services herself too. It's easy to imagine how upset and angry she was. I learned many important things from her. When she decided to sever all ties that connected us, I had already been maintaining a distance from her. I understand well that she had provided me with financial support in several crucial areas of my life. She did not want me to leave the house, but still, she knew how to resolve conflicts and could always find a way to make everyone happy. I think my father would not have wanted us to fight over these issues, but in the end, my mother made her choice, and it almost broke my heart. I was her precious daughter, and that's why I couldn't understand why this was happening to me. As I write this, I feel the pain in my heart. This incident was a time when my mother was wrong, and one of the few moments when I was right. I can't help but think how much better it would have been if it were the other way around. I want to see what kind of price Dan will pay in the future. And understanding that I have gotten the house makes me realize I have won. At that moment, I felt like a winner, but as time passed, that feeling of victory turned into sadness. I feel incredibly lonely from the depths of my heart for not being able to see my mother. Being away from my mother for so long has become a heavy burden for me, but pride came first, and I decided to avoid contacting her. If I had reached out to her at that time, maybe she would have opened her heart to me. Perhaps I could have realized sooner that Dan was destroying my relationship with my mother. I was at the office when my mother last spoke with Dan and his family, so I don't know what was said. However, as a result, my mother ended up separating from Dan. Still, my mother and I haven't been in contact for a while, and she is also avoiding talking to me, so I don't know what she is doing. The next time I learned what had happened to her was when I received a phone call from the hospital informing me that she had collapsed. My mother suddenly had a heart attack in a store. When I went to my mother's apartment to check her belongings, I found a letter my father had left for her. Dan had gained my mother's trust and taken everything she had, and I feel regret. If I could, I am filled with the desire to contact my father and apologize. Before Dan put a ring on my mother's finger, I think I should have investigated him more. I truly have many regrets. Have you ever made a dramatic decision that significantly changed your path in life? I wasn't sure if I should tell everyone, but I am focusing on my mother's recovery and supporting her as much as possible. Still, I feel it is my responsibility to inform you all about this incident. As you can imagine, both my mother and I were very dissatisfied with the situation. We were filled with anger and sadness, feeling as if the whole world had betrayed us. However, I focused on caring for my mother and rebuilding trust in our relationship. Dan no longer exists, and his daughter is currently detained by the police. That's because Dan was killed by someone. Someone reported it to the police, and his daughter was taken in as a witness. I am planning to visit her as soon as possible. After what she has done, I want to look into her eyes and see if regret appears on her face. If it doesn't, I might think that she should have met the same fate as Dan. First, I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me during this difficult time. Fortunately, my mother has recovered safely. In fact, this was not the first time my mother had a heart attack. I was very afraid and felt like I might lose her. Please believe me. I regret every small mistake I made regarding the romance scam involving Dan. Verification and research are important, and one should not judge things solely based on impressions. At least my father had ensured that my name was properly listed on the house's title deed. Without it, there was a high chance we would have lost the house to them. I also reaffirmed that one should be cautious about whom they invite into their home. The reason is that the person may not be who you think they are. Fortunately, we were able to achieve a good outcome. Still, it deeply pains my heart to hear about people who are in more unfortunate situations than us.